Get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Big Tent USA. I think all of you have been with us, but just because it's important to say, Big Tent USA is a national women-led pro-democracy organization promoting civic engagement through education and activism. With 1 week to go before the midterms, makes my heart race to even say that. We wanted to share some great activism opportunities for you this week with the home stretch in sight. So don't get anxious, get active. And Vanessa's going to throw some links in the chat and tell you a couple ways that you can get involved in nonpartisan get out the vote efforts.
Yes, so a couple of opportunities would be great for you all to take advantage of. So today, actually tonight, from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, we have the Women's March Foundation, which is nonpartisan 501c3 Defend Democracy Text Bank. So if you like to text bank, they actually make it really fun. They play music. It's very energizing. I would highly encourage you to join that, and I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. And then we also have Make the Road Pennsylvania, who we had on 2 weeks ago with Diana Robinson. They are holding phone banks on Wednesday. So tomorrow from 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Friday and Monday. So I will put those links in the chat now. And as Kitty said, let's just go all the way to the finish line. There's a lot of opportunities out there.
Great. Thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, please take a look in the chat. And also, if you haven't opened your newsletter from Big Tent, there's some more opportunities, activism opportunities in that. And it dropped Monday morning. So please take a look at that as well. Well, we're so happy to welcome the executive director and founder of PA Youth Vote today, our final tent talk before the midterms. We are really pleased because Angie is just full of inspiration and wisdom. So it's perfect for those of us who are having some anxiety this week. Angie is a super impressive person. And so her name is Angelique Hinton. She's a political and community organizer and advocate for a new generation of voters. She co-founded PA Youth Vote to educate young people on the vital issues affecting their everyday lives to ensure they show up to the polls and choose their elected leaders wisely. As a political and community organizer, she has created winning outreach and voter and volunteer mobilization programs for My School Votes, an initiative of Michelle Obama's When We All Vote. I'm sure we all know that one. It's a goodie. Before transitioning into full-time advocacy, Angie managed client relationships at the financial services company Vanguard. Additionally, Angie is the president of the Norristown NAACP, council leader, advisory council, racial equity learning community, the Montco Bucks Collaborative, and a board member of the Montgomery County Norristown Public Library, Express Path, and Community Hero. And we are really, really thrilled to welcome Zion Sykes, who is representing the Youth Vote Board and a Youth Vote student. Zion is a second-year student at Penn State University, majoring in global studies and international relations. He serves as the university's undergraduate borough liaison and is president of the university choir. Zion joined PA Youth Vote almost 3 years ago and has worked with them ever since, because he is passionate about civics and has seen the impact of PA Youth Vote firsthand. Your backgrounds are both so impressive, and we're so thrilled you're here. So I yield this Zoom over to you two.
Well, thank you all. Yeah.
Sorry. Please put your questions in the chat for Angie and Zion. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much for having us here. I know me and Zion are always excited to talk about the work that we do at PA Youth Vote. I am especially excited because I just finished a presentation with some college students in my local area. And so it was a room full of young people that seemed to be very civically engaged and educated. And so that always makes me feel very hopeful about our future. I always say, you know, we're going through a whole lot of stuff right now in this country, but the working with young people inspires me every single day, especially people like Zion, who is one of my favorite people in the whole world. And, it lets me know that we will be okay if we continue to focus our energy and our efforts on educating them as to the importance of being civically engaged, why voting matters, and that we need to additionally, to voting, hold leaders accountable to being responsive and representative to all of their constituencies. And so that's the work that we do at PAU Vote. And I'll just stop and say, Zion, do you have anything you want to add there?
No, I think we can just get started, right, roll right into it. I'd
right.
like to start these off with this quote. Let us march on ballot boxes until somehow we will be able to develop the day when men will have food and material necessities for their bodies, freedom and dignity for their spirits, education and culture for their minds. And I just think this quote is really impactful. It's from Martin Luther King, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, on Mother's Day in 1966, right there, as you can see. This just really speaks to the fact that we need to continue, pushing forward and advocating for ourselves until we have the things that we need. And it's sadly still true to this day that, we still need to hold ourselves true to these words.
So as we said, we are PAU Vote. We are a coalition of students. We work with educators and grassroots organizations. I always like to say, collaboration is going to be what saves this nation. And so we are very big on collaboration. We're a nonpartisan collaboration of youth educators and organizations working to elevate youth voices, improve school civics education, and in some places, provide it, because sadly, there are many of school districts that we're in that we prioritize that are underfunded. And so they don't get civics education, believe it or not. And so in some places, we are the only source of this information for them, but also empowering youth as civic actors. So together, we're trying to build youth political power and changing policy and culture around youth voting statewide, really trying to, again, meet young people where they are and change the culture, because I work in politics and it is boring and stiff. And so I'll be honest, I can't see many young people wanting to be a part of that. So we're trying to make sure that we are changing the culture and making it more inviting by making it more relevant for young people so they understand how all of these things connect to their lives. Our values are anti-racism, we're community-based. Again, we've prioritized public schools, primarily in underfunded school districts, voting rights, accountability, and students first. And we really, truly are, as we'll talk through this slide, and as evidenced by Zion being on our board, we are truly an organization that wants to lift the student voice and be led by the students that we are trying to serve. So Zion, I'll turn this slide over to you.
Yeah, so and when it comes to student empowerment, PAU Vote, sort of, as we've been alluding to, led by change-driven and passionate and active students. We work peer-to-peer in order to encourage friends and other people we know to become civically engaged. And we're really invested in, making sure that our communities are the ones that we're working with. So we try and always, give people the resources so that they can get into their own communities and start that work there. Because really, that's the most effective thing. You're not gonna, start doing something just because some random person on TV tells you to. I mean, maybe you're very susceptible to that thing, but more likely you're going to listen to the people that are around you that you know, that you trust. And that's the importance of our community led aspect, getting into these communities and working with people.
And
Students
again,
specifically.
Yep. Traditionally, we're in communities of color, lower income communities, where government has not worked. And so you need to make sure that we're educating, people that the community members trust, so that when they have those conversations, they'll be more likely to be, engaged. So again, we talked about changing the policy and the culture of youth voting. We do this through a number of ways. We build teams in high schools. And so going back to the previously slide that Zion went over, we educate young people and then we empower them by paying them. We pay them stipends to go into high schools and do voter registration peer to peer. And so they may go into homerooms and advisories, and they actually do peer to peer voter registration in high school. And again, we work with teachers who help the students coordinate these efforts, and then we pay students stipends to do the work, on a consistent basis. So it's not just, we are consistently engaging young people year round, not just a couple of weeks before an election, but it's year-round engagement that we're doing, because that's how you connect these things to issues that are impacting them, right? And you keep them continuously engaged so they understand. We focus on local elections and the importance of voting in those, because those most directly impact their lives on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to the behavior that you often see, which is, people think a lot of times they don't even realize we have elections outside of the presidential. And so making sure they understand those local elections and how they are impacting them and why they should care about who's running for those offices is critically important to the work that we do. We also have a mock election in partnership with Committee of 70, which is statewide. So again, trying to change that culture and continuously engage. We create curriculum so that the students and teachers can teach about the election. And then on November 1st, which is today actually, we have a statewide youth mock election. So they get the experience of voting and understand what that process looks and feels like. And then we have the podcast, which I'll let Zion talk about, because Zion has done a lot of work in the podcast. I think it's important to understand that podcast that we have was created by young people, and it is legitimately the content, the editing, all of that is done by young people. And Zion, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you have covered on the podcast, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, so with the podcast, it really focuses on not only I guess the civic engagement aspect of it, being involved in being up to date on I guess policy and politics in general. It also just deals with the lives of younger people. Like one of the episodes that I helped with was the applying to colleges, when I had finished applying to colleges, just to sort of give some people tips and things like that for what you can do. We've also talked about like dealing with stress, but we also do talk about things like Supreme Court cases and how they rule, why they rule these ways, different sides of of those kinds of arguments. Things like the Crown Act, which is pretty big. What else is there? There's a lot of things that get discussed. We sometimes bring different people who are running for office onto the podcast to talk to them. Like during the judicial elections, we brought on, I can't remember who we brought on. Sorry, but we brought on a candidate.
Carolyn Nichols, who was running for our state Supreme Court. We currently don't have any African Americans in our upper appellate courts. And so we had a candidate running. And so really just trying to understand, her lived experience and why, that plays a role in, her potential candidacy and what that could mean to a state. Was something that was very important to us, again, because we're primarily going into communities of color. So understanding that we don't have any current leaders in that body that are of color is one thing that most people didn't know. But then talking about how that lived experience can shape kind of, what she sees her role in, were she elected. She did not win ultimately, but it was a very powerful conversation for, predominantly, again, we have young, Black and brown students that work. So to see that was very powerful. And so I always say you have to see it to believe it. And so seeing representatives who look like you matters a lot. And so it also, gives young people the inspiration to know that they too can run for some of these offices one day and be elected to leadership. To go back to the podcast, we also do candidate interviews. We do them all the time at election time in partnership with Committee of 70. And so we actually partner with them to understand which candidates are, going to be running in the school districts, and then set up candidate interviews that are, specific to the school district where they will come in and actually be asked questions by young people. And again, helping young people understand the role they play in the democratic process and helping to elect people, that these candidates are interviewing for jobs. And so part of their requirement should be to talk to the people who will ultimately be hiring them or not. And so that's a big part of the work that we do. We also do a lot around policy change. And so we have been doing a lot of advocacy work with school districts. And so, for instance, in Philadelphia, we have partnered and actually got the Philadelphia School District after 3 years, and having students like Zion and many more other grassroots organizations, elected officials testifying to the school board, which again is another form of holding leadership accountable, right? Teaching them that process. We were able to get the school board to pass a policy which requires voter education, right? Voter registration efforts, and actually they pay now a teacher in school districts, I believe it's $30 an hour for up to like 30, 40 hours to own that process in their school. And then we pay students that work with those, what's called voter champions. So that was amazing work that we did. And this picture that you see under the policy change was our student programming, our summer programming last year was we created this farm theater in partnership with one of our amazing partners called Just Act. And it's art activism. And so we created a play called How's Your Voice Going to Matter If You Don't Vote? We performed it on the steps of the administration building, just on the first day that the school board was going to be meeting in person. And then we had prepped 5 students to go into the school district at the school board meeting and testify about the importance of civic engagement. And it was so powerful to me because one of the students was first generation American. And so he said they never had these conversations in their family because his parents couldn't vote. However, after spending the summer around the work that we have done, civic engagement and civic education, he understands how voting and civic engagement plays a part in policy and getting to a place of racial equity and racial justice. And so that was super powerful. That was his testimony. And a few months after that play, we actually got the policy passed. And so we just recently, last week, got a second school district to pass a policy in my hometown called Norristown. And so we have 3 or 4 more school districts right now that are currently trying to also pass similar policies because most people don't understand. And I hope if you take away nothing from this call, you take away this, that when we think students are apathetic, the reality is many school districts are underfunded today and don't have the ability to teach this information. And so students are not being taught why voting matters, how it ties to the, you being able to elect people that are responsive and representative about issues you care about. And so that's the work that we're really trying to do. And these policies help ensure that we can partner with school districts to bring these to districts that can't afford to have this sort of program themselves. We also do professional development for educators. So we partner with school districts and teach them how to teach some of this information. We create curriculum for teachers about all things related to civics and voting and all of those things. Zion, did I leave anything out on this slide? Nope.
No, I think you got it all.
All right, you want to talk a little bit about the QR codes because this is super amazing, right? We work with young people.
Yeah, so this is just a fun little thing that we've begun to start doing, creating QR codes that are linked to specific schools or universities that'll give students an quick and easy access to voter registration. With this, you don't have to waste any more paper printing out tedious forms. You don't have to worry about the bad handwriting or incomplete forms thing because it'll tell you if you've missed something. You can't just submit it without it. And then with your signature, you can just write it and then take a picture of it. Easy. And it's fun because you can get people, we can customize them for whatever school that we want to send it to. Like we have one for Penn State and it has the Nittany lion on it, which I thought was pretty cool. And it got people scanning it to see what it was. And this really just the best thing about this though is it allows us to keep track of who's used these forms or use this link to register. and it allows us to, reach back out to them later in the year. Like maybe this week would be a good time for us to start going through in order to make sure that they actually go out and vote by calling them, just doing phone banks.
We actually did a phone bank last week at Central High School, which is where Zion graduated from. We have these links are created. We have a website portal in partnership with the Department of State and Rock the Vote. And so these links allow students to register. And even if they don't have their driver's license, which many students in Philadelphia, for instance, where they use public transportation more than having to have a driver's license and drive a car, this enables them to complete the entire registration process. And if they have a touch screen, they can sign right there on the phone, or if they have a tablet. And then again, we do get the information so we can follow up and do that GOTV work, which is amazing for all of you. I heard you're doing some text banking. Let me just tell you, I have been doing political work for a long time, and phone banking was my least favorite thing in the world. However, when you call young people, they are the most pleasant people ever. They answer the call, they're thankful. And so it really does create, and it's a really cool experience because we can have young people calling other young people that they've registered and reminding them about the importance of the election and making sure they actually do turn out and vote. Here is something else we do. We help schools understand how to register for, in Pennsylvania, we have a governor civic engagement ward, right? And so many schools don't even know this exists. And so we help them understand how to register. And then, that way when they participate, they can be recognized by the Department of State, who has come out and given plaques and certificates and really recognizing the students for their efforts, which is a big deal to some of these schools who typically don't get visits from elected officials, right? To have them come in and make a big deal about the work they're doing, I think is very important and, very motivating for them to continue. And, young people are competitive. And so they want to be able to brag on the fact that they're being recognized by the Department of State. And here you can see is a picture of an instance where the Department of State came out and recognized a school. All right. And so this is something that we did because, again, we talked about how we engage year round. And so we do summer programming. In addition, during the school year, we're doing voter registration teams, and we're having education information sessions with students where we're helping them understand, what does a state representative do? What does a school board member do? How does it impact your life? And so we give them that information. What does a DA do, right? All of these things, how it all connects to them. And again, makes it really relevant. In the summer, we also do civic engagement work. And so this is an opportunity for you to kind of see a story that highlighted some of the work that we did over the summer with a group. Again, collaboration. So we partnered with Urban Affairs Coalition, Philly Youth Network, the school district to provide paid opportunities for 52 students to come and learn how to be community organizers and or how to be part of Forum Theater, which is art activism. And so some of the things they did, because again, we teach them it's not just voting, but it's civically engagement, right? Participating year round, holding leaders accountable, advocacy. And so they did things like go to Harrisburg and hold a press conference in the Rotunda about gun violence and how that was impacting them. Gun violence overwhelmingly was the issue that, because we lead by listening and connecting issues they care about. Gun violence, sadly, our programming was in Philadelphia. So that was the #1 issue that they were faced with. And so I'm going to play just a little. I'm going to stop this for 1 minute and then show you the video that highlights the work that we did.
On the future, we are following a familiar group of young activists who are inspiring other teens to register to vote.
And this week, they're taking their show on the road to some high places. Our Rakisha Bailey takes us along for the ride.
Not interested in voting. He doesn't think it matters. Young activists using improv to illustrate their vision at Central High School just a few weeks ago.
Hi, ladies. How are you? Hi.
From rehearsing voter skits to discussing social and political policies, Pennsylvania Youth Vote and Community Uprising told us they are looking to make a change.
I personally feel like gun violence has gone up the charts.
This is as far as lobbyists can go.
Now they made their voices heard to state legislators in Harrisburg.
And table chair, and that's where the Speaker of the House stands and presides over the body. As the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives.
Dozens of Philadelphia youth spoke to members of the House.
You have to live with the fear that maybe one day you or your family won't come home. All other Philadelphians worry that we might be the next face on a t-shirt. We need better paying jobs that pay more than $7.25 an hour. How is someone supposed to stay passionate about something or make a living when they get paid so little and feel less than?
We have the capacity to hold our leadership accountable.
Hillary Doe is one of the mentors for Community Uprising. She says a big focus is to bring awareness about gun violence and demand lawmakers to take action.
They have a lot of grit and resilience, and I think everyone should be watching out for them in the future because they're the change makers.
From Harrisburg and back to Philadelphia, the youth activists were invited to speak with Mayor Jim Kenney. We followed up by asking the mayor, who is accountable on getting a grip on gun violence?
We hold the government accountable. We have, as a government, the authority and power to control the availability of these weapons. They do it in other countries.
It's why Philadelphia Youth Vote continues to recreate these skits with the message.
Our voice matters. Our vote matters. The change we need to see made matters.
Waukesha Bailey, CBS 3 Eyewitness News.
Well, there are so many outstanding.
And so that was, again, our summer programming, and it was very, very powerful. And so, but that's just an example of kind of what we do over the summer. And so I'll take us back here. All right. And so, I mean, that kind of, I think, captures pretty much the things that we do. Zion, I'll turn it over to you really quickly and see what you think I left out and what else we should discuss. But primarily, we spend our time year round working with young people to help them connect the issues they care about to the importance of voting and holding leaders accountable. We teach them, in addition to voting, things like op-eds, things like writing letters to legislators, things like having press conferences, all of those things that you need to do to advocate and push elected leaders, because we understand and we make sure they understand elected leadership will only be as good as we demand they be. And so we give them the tools to just not just vote, but also use their voices constructively to advocate for changes they want to see. Zion, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think you put most of it into perspective well, but I just say, like, one thing on top of, sort of connecting us to the issues, there's also the aspect of figuring out how we connect those issues, like in what way we do that. Like, we have form theater, we have, figuring out how to write op-eds. You mentioned this as well, but I think there's a lot of variety with what we do. And it's really, if a student has a passion for it, we'll figure out a way to get you on the way and make sure you are able to fully achieve your vision.
And I want to add one more thing. Zion, he's probably going to get embarrassed, but when Zion first came to us in 2020, he was super, super shy. He was not even turning his camera on for the most part. Now, at the time, I didn't know he was going through some struggles, right, in his own personal life. But, the sense of community that we built ultimately gave him, the comfort, right, and the confidence to kind of know that, we kind of look at this as again, like a community. And so little by little, Zion started turning his camera on and started, talking more and more and offering all of the amazing, input that he has, because he's brilliant. And ultimately, after, a few years, he became one of our board members. And so what we also do, in addition, though, to just the civic engagement, right, is we help them again, find that confidence in their voice. And we create spaces and opportunities for them to get exposed to things that they probably ordinarily wouldn't be comfortable within exposing themselves to. And so when Zion came home this summer, I said, Zion, you're a board member and you're home for the summer. So you are going to do the press conferences for the organization. And so initially, he was very nervous, and we helped them like initially kind of understand how to write a statement and the context of it. And so initially he was a little bit nervous. And throughout the summer, he did those press conferences. Then he got an internship paid in one of the Senate offices and got that exposure. By the end of the summer, that clip that you just saw at the mayor's office, we were in the mayor's reception room, we had to do a press conference. And so I said, Zion, you're going to do the press conference. And he was a little nervous because it was the mayor of Philadelphia. But when I tell you the growth and how he walked up there like a boss and did that press conference and was so composed and just amazing that immediately after the press that was in the room gravitated to him and wanted to talk to him. And so a lot of what we're also doing is helping these young people understand that all of these rooms exist that they may not know about, right? And help them get comfortable being uncomfortable in walking into them, because they belong in all these rooms. And that's how we're going to actually see the change structurally that we want to see. And so I always like to share that story, Zion. I hope I didn't embarrass you.
Okay.
But he's amazing. And, he has just become an incredible leader of this organization, and represents us in so many capacities. And initially when he came to us, he just was a little shy. And so I am super proud. And that is some of the most gratifying pieces of the work that we're doing right now for me. Right. And so I just think it's important for people to understand that too, because we're definitely a leadership development organization as well. And so this is pretty much our last slide. How can you all help? One, you can follow us on your social media, right? Like that would be amazing if you follow us. We put out a lot of information specifically geared towards young people, right? And so if you want to be inspired, right, and know that we're going to be okay, you would follow us and see some of the amazing work that we continue to do. I just mentioned before the call started that last week, Zion was we did a huge event last week, and it was young people who were newly registered. We had about 6 schools that took the bus down to our city hall and literally shut down City Hall and walked around. It was National Vote Early Day. And we had students who voted early on Vote Early Day. And so Zion was an MC along with Al Schmidt, who many of you may have seen during the 2020 campaign. He got a lot of news. He just recently testified. He used to be one of the 3 Philadelphia commissioners. Now he is the president and is a CEO of Committee of 70, who is one of our big partners. And so Zion and him led this program, but it was empowering because young people got to actually participate and make their voices heard. And we had young students speaking. And so all of that is on our social media. So if you're not following us, you'll miss all of those amazing things and you won't be as inspired as I am every single day. You can donate if you can, that would be great. Talk about us to other people in that that have school districts. We are statewide, but we need help connecting with other school districts. So anything to help out with that. And then again, if you know people on school boards, right, connecting us there so we can help try to get this policy passed, so that we can make sure that every student, I'll be honest, like I said, we do this work primarily, our prioritization is communities of color, low income, underfunded. But I also do some work with a school district like Lower Merion, who is not any of those things. And to see the difference in the education those students have on all of these things, right, it's painful sometimes, to be honest, right? Because they know why they need to be voting and they come from communities where government has worked. And so if we really want to see racial equity and racial justice, then we need to make sure that we're getting all students access to this information. And I talked about social media. And that's really kind of the end of the presentation, and I'll open it up. This is just we do TikToks, which are really cute. And this was our very first voter registration drive back in 2020. And so we had a group of kids. It was COVID. We needed something for them to do positive. And so we do TikToks because it's a way that young people like to engage. And so I will stop my share and then open it up and see who has questions.
Wow, Angie and Zion, thank you so much. That was really just what the civics engagement doctor ordered for me, at least. I want to get into some questions. You guys did a great job. I think we all learned a lot about the work that you do. It seemed like you have really combined sort of that the voting piece with the advocacy piece, and making these kids really imbuing these kids with the idea that you don't just show up on election day or early voting, but you have to continue to follow through and hold leaders accountable, and also learn how to be the change you want to see. I mean, Zion, that's a great story about you speaking at the mayor's office. I'm super impressed by that. Can we pull back a little bit? Zion, can you sort of tell us what it felt like when you originally started to sort of learn about what it means to be a citizen in the United States? Why it seemed to change you or maybe give you confidence. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
So I don't think it was necessarily like understanding what being a citizen in the US that gave me confidence. It was just sort of being a part of this community that valued my ideas and my presence. I think that was really what was the champion in me gaining my confidence, I guess. But what really made me understand the importance of it was it was during COVID I sort of got involved the beginnings couple weeks, and it's actually kind of sad. So I remember dealing a lot with it. I had a relative who got sick with COVID and passed away, and I took a while thinking like, man, I wish that hadn't happened to her. I wish she didn't have to deal with this thing. And then I saw there was like a proposal to, thank you, Miss Kitty. There was a proposal to have every household in the US receive XYZ to combat COVID, but for some reason that wasn't passed, or it didn't have any follow through. And that really put in my perspective that these policies have the ability to impact people's lives, and in this case, could have saved many. And from there, I thought a lot on how I could sort of help not sway people's opinions, but get more people involved and let them understand the same thing, the same realization that I had. And I just had a friend who happened to be working with Miss Angie at the time, and I was like, "Hey, how do you get involved in this? Where do I start?" And I was just told, "Go to this meeting, and you'll get what you need there." And from then, it led me to where I am today.
I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm really glad that you you did join and did learn, because I think your voice is really important. I think it's going to be really important. I'm excited to see what you end up doing. Angie, can you tell us like how you get PA Youth Vote into schools? How does that community partnership work? What does it entail? Clearly, you've scaled it pretty quickly. So describe that to us, please.
So again, we have a really great partnership in Philadelphia School District. And so we do the professional development for their teachers, and we partner, and teachers are actually paid. But I am also an organizer in every sense of the word. And so I am the president of the NAACP. And so I have amazing organizer friends that are at League of Women Voters. Right. And so League of Women Voters learned about the work we do, and they're a big partner of ours. And so they had me on the call with their statewide elected people that are running like, the civics or election kind of stuff that for whatever reason, League of Women Voters was in a lot of schools doing voter registration. They're very trusted. They're nonpartisan. So really it's about collaboration. And so collaborating with organizations like NAACPs throughout, the area, League of Women Voters, Committee of 70, right? And then grassroots organizations. What I find, I think to me, which will be greatly impactful, is there are a lot of grassroots organizations in communities like Philadelphia who are, for instance, just trying to help kids survive the pain they're feeling from like the gun violence issue, right? But again, government hasn't worked. And so they're not necessarily bringing that civics component to the work they're doing. They're doing more mentorship and, really just trying to provide resources and support. And so lately, what we've been able to do is really partner with some of those organizations to tie the issues that are impacting their, the students they're working with to civic engagement, right? And that's how you then drive the change, right, around those issues that they care about. So it's really collaboration, I'd say, has been the biggest way that we've been able to get into different school districts. And I just think in general, collaboration right now, that is really truly how we are going to get this country to a better place, is if we're working together and not being duplicative or redundant, but really trying to figure out who's doing what, right? And how can we partner and expand our reach?
Amen. I totally agree with you. So once you're in schools, I would imagine that it's so important to sort of meet teachers where they are. And you did mention the fact that you have materials for educators. Can you briefly tell us about how you add to what educators are already doing and make it, user friendly for them?
So we create curriculum. My co-founder is a teacher, right, in
Okay.
Philadelphia School District. And so we have curriculum on our website, just readily available for teachers to use, right? We also, however, in our advocacy space, school funding is a huge issue in Pennsylvania. Many people don't realize that at the state level, there's a lawsuit currently against the legislature because there is inequitable and inadequate school funding that is impacting Black and Brown predominantly attended schools all across the state. And you're talking about severe disparity. Where I live in Norristown, predominantly Black and Brown, they are underfunded by $4,645 for every student. Philadelphia, underfunded by $5,583 per student. Now, if some of my kids, like in this district, lived across the street, they would go to school in a more wealthy, more white community, and they would be completely funded, right? However, again, because most of these communities that are impacted have kind of, not seen government work and aren't necessarily as engaged, right, as we think they would be, they don't even understand this is an issue. So what we did was we created curriculum for teachers to teach students about this issue so they could go home and tell their parents about this issue, right? And then we can help people understand that it's not your school board that's responsible for your property taxes being so high. It's the fact that the state legislature doesn't want to invest in public education, right? And so we are 45th, 46th, or 47th when it comes to public investment in education in the country, right? And so when you understand who really is responsible, then you can really, again, hold the appropriate people accountable. So we do work like that, create curriculum, but then we do really meet teachers where they are. There are some teachers who create their teams and they're good and they kind of understand how to, we give them the PD session, the professional development session, and they kind of operate more independently. But there are some schools that just don't have the capacity. And so, for instance, Kensington High School locally here in Philadelphia, I went to 6 times and have done, I can't even tell you how many different presentations for classrooms to actually teach them. We have a civic presentation that we do in partnership with the Commissioner of Philadelphia and the Urban League of Philadelphia. And so I will go in more repeatedly to a school like that. And then Norristown, I just went in which recently passed a policy. I spent the entire day there like I was a student. So I went in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I did 4 huge classes, which was over 200 students. And then what we did, because again, we pay student stipends, we paid student stipends. We had t-shirts created with QR codes and their logo, and it was for Norristown. And we paid them to wear the t-shirts, and they went around and registered their peers in class. And so, again, we have a new election coming up. So we will, change our presentations to reflect who's going to be on the ballot next time after this election. And then again, it's really trying to be, flexible to what the teachers need, because some teachers don't have the capacity to take on one more thing. And so we try to understand, well, how can we best support you, right? And then do that.
Yeah, it's so important. As a former teacher, I think that you've really you've threaded that needle really crucially. So we saw the slide of the QR code. You've talked a little bit about TikTok, but tell us a little bit about how you guys use social media to engage students. We all know that they're like this a lot of the time. So give us a sense of how social media plays into what you guys are doing.
I can start on that really quickly. So counter to, I guess a lot of people who are older, and get news from like, I don't know, CBS or something. It's easier to just, hop on Instagram, and if you follow a page and you see something randomly, or your friends like posted on their story, you have that information right there. And what PA Youth Vote does is utilizes that same idea. We post on our pages different infographics or general repost different things that we find to be reputable and give a good understanding of, or a basic, dive to a topic, so that we can, disseminate this information to all of our, viewers and anyone who's interested in learning about it. And that allows us to, generate interest in that topic, but also gets people more interested in what we're doing as well. So it's a win-win. People get educated. We get more people visiting us, and where then they can learn more. So it's like a feedback cycle there. And I think it's just, I don't know, just necessary for the modern age. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'll
for
add,
sure.
our social media is again led by young people. So we have young people who create that social media and pull into what we're posting on social media, right? Because what we're finding is, first of all, let me just tell you guys, they are Facebook haters. They don't like Facebook, right? And they're like, so, but help a young person to understand the different mediums and what's appropriate to put where, right? So like knowing the audience and making sure they're engaging that audience in the way that audience likes to be engaged. So Facebook, people like to be engaged differently than Instagram. It's just pretty much a picture, right? And then TikTok, it's the video. And then, Twitter is something different. So really trying to, again, meet people where they are on these different social media mediums is also critically important. And then bringing that cultural aspect to it, right? Music and, things that are going to be engaging for the people we're trying to reach is critically important as well.
And along with that, it did seem like that the use of theater and improv was really important to sort of motivating students and getting students to become advocates, to taking it to the next step. Can you describe how you sort of arrived at that way of engaging students? Because I thought it was really interesting, because it seemed to fly in the face of students being kind of embarrassed to put themselves out there at teenagers. So I'd love to hear about that a little bit.
So I'll take this one because it's interesting you say that, and Zion touched on it earlier, right? We try to have different avenues for young people. And so there are certain young people that really enjoy that work, right? And they, are drawn to that work. And so that's available as an option for them to engage in this space, right? We also have the podcast. Those are some people that are just not comfortable with the improv and the acting, right? And so they are podcasters maybe, right? Where they are expressing themselves and engaging that way. Zion, one of his favorite things was the community voter registration engagement, where we would go out into underserved communities, right? Or we would do ShopRite Saturdays and really talking to people about the importance of civic engagement, right? So what we found is students, just like all of us, like to do different things, and we try to create a space for them to do what they like to do, right? But also lifting up the work that, we're ultimately trying to do, which is get more young people to understand the importance of this engagement.
Additionally, I also just think that it's people are really interested in trying new things, and form theater is not something that's the most accessible, I guess. If you want to take a form theater class, that might cost a lot of money, but with this, you're learning how to do it and getting paid. So it's like, just the opportunity itself is enticing to.
Yeah, it's super cool. How important is it to have that stipend, Angie, do you think?
Very important.
Yeah.
Very important, because again, keep in mind the communities that we're prioritizing are low income and communities of color. And so, typically they have to work at some point to be able to, have some of the things they need, right? And so making sure that we're able to pay them to be able to do this work is critically important. We had a student, I remember a couple years back, who had to work. And at that point in time, we didn't have the funding to pay the stipends the way we do now. And so we couldn't pay stipends at that point. And so she took a part-time job working in a fast food restaurant. And I'll never forget, one night someone threw food at her through the drive-in window, and it was extremely frustrating and hurtful to me. So it's critically important that we're able to pay these young people to be able to engage in this space, and also understand, right? Like this is work that they're doing, right? And they should be paid, for their work. And so that's important for them to understand that concept as well for me. And so Zion is a person who, has been working with us for a long time and gets paid stipends. And so maybe Zion, you can talk a little bit to how that has impacted you personally.
Yeah, so I mean, like Miss Andrew was saying, the stipends are really just helpful in allowing me to continue to develop my time, and well, I put all that my effort I can into PA Youth Vote related activities, but it lets me devote more time because instead of having to work a different kind of a job, or I don't know, try and find some other avenue to get paid, I can do this, what I'm passionate about, and get paid for it. So it really, not saying it's the number one incentive, but it helps a lot. Yeah.
Definitely. I know we're coming to the end of our time. Could you just do like 1 minute on the statewide mock election, which is so exciting since we do have a real election next Tuesday? Just give us a quick down and dirty about that mock election. I love it so much.
Well, so again, that's in partnership with Committee of 70. And so basically we create a curriculum for students that going into today, they would prep them with that curriculum so they would understand, and then the students will vote. Now, this is like our first year of doing this. And so it's pretty elementary at this point. They're voting via like Google form, right? But next year, we're hoping to make it even more innovative and really increase. This year has been exciting for us because, reminder, the first couple of years we were in COVID, so it was challenging to really get into some of these schools. But this is the first year that we've been able to again bring in schools from the suburbs in addition to Philadelphia. And so I'm excited today to see kind of what the participation is, and we will publicize everything too, to see like how the students voted. But it's again just an opportunity for many to participate in a process that they never participated in before. We used to be able to bring out voting machines into schools, but with COVID, they can't do that anymore. And so this is another alternative to try to give them exposure to this exercise, and then really kind of get them excited to see kind of, well, what did the youth decide, right? One thing we want to do next year in thinking ahead in the Philadelphia area, specifically the mayor's race, right? And city council, and you heard the gun violence and how that is just such a prevalent issue. So we want to do a huge educational series around what does a mayor do? How does it impact you? What does city council do? What is a city budget, right? How do you have influence on community investment? All of those things. But again, really kind of just finding different ways to help them kind of participate and understand, the importance of all of this is like super exciting, but also like Zion is extremely inspiring. So on days when I feel like, oh boy, right, like what is happening in this world, like they always undoubtedly do something that reminds me, right, that we're going to be okay if we just stay focused on making sure they're educated and engaged. We will get to a place at some point where, all of this, because they're very action oriented once they get this information. And so it quiets down my concerns a lot, and it just keeps me inspired and hopeful. It has got me through many a dark day since 2020.
Yes. And of course, I can't say it any better than what you just said, Angie. Yes. And don't forget to go vote next Tuesday. Thank you, John. And I just want to say a big, big thank you to Angie and to Zion and to Youth PA Vote and the work that you do. When I am getting stressed out this week and maybe even after the election, because I don't think we're going to know a lot of things on election night, I'm going to be thinking about getting to meet you, getting to hear about your work, and just, from the bottom of our Big Tent heart, we just want to say thank you so much. We'd love to have you back in 2023, because it sounds like you're going to learn a lot about your mock election today, and we're going to learn a lot about who showed up in 2022. And so we will definitely follow you on social media, promote your work, and just thank you so much for joining us today. I myself really needed this, and I think we all learned a lot and got a lot out of your time, talent, and energy. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. We'll definitely come back as often as you'll have us.
We will see you in 2023. Fingers crossed.
Awesome.
Youth shows up. All right.
Thank
Take care,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Angie and Zion.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.